The unsettling phone call arrived on a humid Friday morning, shattering the quiet sanctuary of my porch with a voice that trembled under the weight of an agonizing secret. My name is Arthur Vance, a 62-year-old retired landscape architect living in a restored Victorian home in Savannah, Georgia, where I had spent decades cultivating a peaceful existence after a lifetime of hard work. 2 years ago, I officially stepped away from my design firm to embrace a slower pace of life filled with coastal walks, gardening, and watching my 28-year-old daughter, Chloe, flourish in her career as a dedicated pediatric nurse. Chloe possessed the radiant, unfiltered laughter of her late mother, Eleanor, who passed away from cancer 5 years ago, leaving the two of us to navigate the world with a fierce, protective bond. When Chloe arrived at my house on a warm evening in midsummer to joyfully announce that Julian Croft, a prominent local historic restoration developer, had proposed to her, my eyes welled with tears of profound relief. Listening to her ecstatic voice echoing through the kitchen, I genuinely believed that the long, heavy shadow of grief was finally lifting from our lives to make way for her well-deserved happiness. Julian was a charismatic 29-year-old who always wore impeccably tailored suits, opened every door for Chloe, and spoke to me with a level of profound deference that effortlessly disarmed my natural paternal instincts. Over the course of their 2-year courtship, I had interacted with him exactly a dozen times, and on every single occasion, he appeared to be the epitome of a steady, honorable gentleman. Eager to celebrate their future, I insisted on completely financing a lavish engagement gala, firmly overruling Chloe's modest protests by reminding her that her mother would have wanted this milestone marked with elegance. To ensure absolute perfection, I retained Evelyn Mercer, a renowned boutique event coordinator whose meticulous reputation in the historic district was backed by over a decade of flawless celebrations. The grand celebration took place on a breathtaking September evening at the historic Jasmine Manor, where 80 guests gathered under Spanish moss to enjoy live jazz, coastal cuisine, and the services of a professional candid photographer named Marcus. Moving silently through the crowd, Marcus used a high-resolution camera to document the evening, completely unaware that his lens was capturing a truth that would soon dismantle our entire world. During the reception, Julian delivered a beautifully moving speech about devotion that brought several guests to tears, and when he looked me directly in the eye and promised to cherish my daughter forever, I offered a silent prayer of gratitude. By the time the evening concluded and I helped load the remaining floral arrangements into my truck, I felt a deep, unfamiliar sense of absolute peace radiating through my soul. The subsequent weeks passed in a beautiful, ordinary blur as Chloe happily toured potential new homes in the historic district, and Julian remained as attentive and charming as ever. Then, on a foggy morning in early October, my phone buzzed while I was walking through the Forsyth Park Gardens, forever altering the trajectory of our lives. "Arthur, I need you to listen to me very carefully and remain calm," Evelyn Mercer murmured, her usually vibrant voice reduced to a tense, strained whisper that immediately caused my chest to tighten with dread. She refused to provide any details over the phone, insisting instead that I come to her design studio immediately and, most importantly, that I keep the conversation entirely secret from Chloe. Compelled by an overwhelming sense of urgency, I drove across town to the converted brick warehouse that housed her office, finding her sitting alone at a long conference table with a laptop open before her. Evelyn explained that while auditing the photographer's raw digital proofs before finalizing the album, she had stumbled upon a series of background images that she felt legally and morally obligated to show me first. She turned the screen toward me and pressed play on a magnified sequence captured near the manor's darkened magnolia grove around 10 o'clock that evening. In the shadows of the estate, completely separated from the main festivities, stood Julian Croft, locked in an undeniable, highly intimate embrace with his lead interior designer, Marissa Stone. The high-definition camera had captured the unmistakable silhouette of Julian whispering into Marissa's ear while his hand rested familiarly on her waist, revealing a casual comfort that could only be born from a long-standing, clandestine affair. I sat frozen in the chair, staring at the digital evidence of the man who had stood before me hours earlier wearing my late wife's blessing while actively betraying my daughter. Evelyn closed the laptop with a heavy sigh, assuring me that Marcus had blindly uploaded the raw files without reviewing the background details, meaning the devastating truth remained entirely between the two of us for the moment. I thanked her with a strained voice, stepped out into the humid afternoon air, and sat in my truck for a long time as a cold, calculating rage replaced my initial shock. As an architect, I knew that a flawed foundation always yielded a collapsed structure, so rather than confronting Julian blindly, I resolved to systematically uncover the true scope of his deception. I immediately contacted Thomas Drake, a retired investigator and old friend, asking him to quietly scrutinize Julian's corporate background and real estate dealings for any hidden fractures. By the following afternoon, Thomas called me back with a grim tone, revealing that Julian's pristine public persona was merely a carefully constructed facade hiding a history of predatory financial behavior. He discovered an active, high-stakes civil lawsuit filed against Julian's development firm by an 80-year-old widow named Clara Montgomery, who alleged she had been systematically defrauded out of her family estate. According to the legal public records Thomas forwarded to my email, Julian had manipulated the vulnerable woman into signing over her historic property by utilizing deliberately falsified, undervalued appraisals to net his firm millions. This revelation confirmed that Julian wasn't just an unfaithful partner suffering a momentary lapse in judgment. He was a cold, practiced sociopath who viewed people as assets to be exploited. Desiring to look into the eyes of his victims myself, I drove out to a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of the city to personally meet with Clara Montgomery. The elegant but fragile woman welcomed me into her home, weeping softly as she described how Julian had used birthday cards, false promises of preservation, and overwhelming charm to completely strip away her financial security. Leaving her apartment with copies of the court documents safely tucked into my jacket, I felt an icy clarity settle over me, knowing exactly what role I had to play to save my daughter from a lifetime of ruin. On Saturday afternoon, I meticulously organized the digital photographs, the appraisal fraud records, and the court filings into a neat manila folder on my kitchen table. To prepare for the hardest conversation of my life, I spent hours cooking low country boil, Chloe's absolute favorite childhood meal, which her mother had perfected and taught me to recreate for moments that required comfort. I mentally summoned Eleanor's enduring strength, promising her spirit that I would deliver the unvarnished truth to our daughter with absolute love and unwavering support. Chloe arrived at my home precisely at 6 o'clock, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers and a bright smile that instantly vanished the moment she observed the somber gravity etched across my face. Sensing the heavy energy in the room, she set the flowers down on the counter and asked me in a quiet, trembling voice if something terrible had happened. I gently guided her over to the dining room table, pulling out her chair and kissing the top of her head before placing the heavy manila folder directly in front of her. With a steady voice wrapped in absolute love, I told her that she possessed her mother's resilient heart, and that before she took another step toward her future, she needed to see the reality of the man she was planning to marry. As she slowly opened the folder and looked at the undeniable photographs of Julian's betrayal, a devastating silence enveloped the room, broken only by the sharp gasp of her heart breaking in real time. I moved to her side, wrapping my arms around her shaking shoulders as she turned the pages to find the legal records detailing his fraudulent schemes against vulnerable elders. Through her tears, Chloe looked up at me with a fierce mixture of sorrow and burgeoning clarity, realizing that the illusion of her perfect fiancé had vanished forever in a matter of minutes. She thanked me for protecting her from a lifetime of calculated deceit, her innate Vance stubbornness flaring to life as she resolved to call off the wedding and face Julian on her own terms. We sat together long into the night, mapping out her next steps with the meticulous precision of an architect rebuilding a life from the ground up, knowing she was finally free. The painful revelation had ultimately spared her from a catastrophic mistake, proving that the truth, no matter how devastating, is the only foundation upon which a real future can be built. As we move forward to bring you more gripping narratives of resilience and truth, your engagement means the world to our creative community. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.